Have you ever put something valuable away in a hidden place for safekeeping, and then completely forgot where you put it? Of course you have, everyone does it, and sometimes it takes us hours or days to find our valuables again. Everything you'll see in this video stayed hidden for a lot longer than that though. We've found some truly incredible things that have turned up in the last place anybody would think to look for them. Paris in France is famously a city that's full of art and culture. Apparently, there's so much art and culture there that huge paintings can go missing for centuries, and nobody has any idea where they are. Construction workers in the city couldn't believe their eyes when they chanced upon this lost masterpiece while renovating a fashion house owned by Oscar de la Renta. Architect Natalie Ryan was knocking down the wall in what used to be an insurance office when she came across a giant oil painting, measuring 10 feet high and 20 feet long, hidden behind the facade. It's a masterpiece from the 17th century, painted by Arnaud de Vuez, and depicts the travels of an ambassador of King Louis XIV as he entered Jerusalem in 1674. It's a little dusty and grimy from spending centuries in a wall space, but it's now going to become the star of its own showroom within the fashion house. In some cases, traces of ancient history get hidden in plain sight, and it just takes the right person to walk past and notice them. Who knows how many people had walked past these ancient petroglyphs in Montserrat before a pair of hikers looked at them more closely and realized that they might be significant. Petroglyphs are carvings made by chipping away at stone, as opposed to hieroglyphs, which are made by painting. These particular petroglyphs predated European settlement and are estimated to be over 1,000 years old. Some of the carvings seem to be of living creatures, whereas others are mysterious geometrical designs. Similar petroglyphs have been discovered close to South American rivers, where the same Arawak and Carib people who once occupied Montserrat now live. Could this have been their original home? The Mildenhall treasure set is one of the most famous ancient Roman discoveries ever made in Britain. The official story is that a laborer named Gordon Butcher came across a metal dish in West Row, England, working in the fields one night in 1943. He alerted his manager, who knew a thing or two about antiques, and the two of them dug out 34 items in total, including bowls, dishes, and spoons. His manager thought the items were either pewter or lead, so he took them home and put them on his mantelpiece. It was only 4 years later that he realized they were silver and took them to be professionally assessed. The 2-foot-wide great dish is the most well-known piece of the treasure and depicts Roman gods dancing. Other pieces bear early Christian symbols. Some speculate that all of the items once belonged to the great Roman general Lupicinus, who was known to have been stationed in England. There are rumors that there were more pieces of treasure originally, but Gordon Butcher and his manager sold them overseas before alerting the authorities. Anything America can do, China likes to think it can do better. That includes having their own answer to Area 51, or at least so we think. China refuses to officially confirm ownership of this mysterious series of buildings in the middle of the Gobi Desert, but it has all the hallmarks of a top-secret military base. The site, which is located between Mongolia and Nepal, and was spotted by keen browsers on Google Earth, has a strange formation of circles and chevrons around a series of runways, which has led some internet conspiracy theorists to say that extraterrestrials are encouraged to land here. Others have pointed out that it looks perfectly laid out to work as a landing pad for reconnaissance aircraft. The American news agency CBS has reported that it's probably used for the calibration of Chinese satellites, but as China refuses to officially acknowledge it, we'll never know for sure. History has shown us that during times of religious persecution, believers will go to extreme lengths to keep their precious texts well hidden. Sometimes they never get the chance to come back for their texts. That would explain why these ancient Muslim texts have been holed up in a wall in a ruined mosque in Dagestan for centuries. They were found by chance by a group of teenagers who'd gone to take a look at the ruins. Archaeologists will be horrified by the way they retrieved them. They dragged them out of the wall, almost tearing them in the process. The fading yellow sheets are all handwritten, containing 2 full copies of the Quran, as well as further notes in Arabic script. The documents are likely to have been hidden in the wall during the time of the Revolution, or possibly during Stalin's rule, when ownership of such texts was a criminal offense punishable by exile to Siberia. They're now under the safe protection of a local library. There's a woman in Wales who's very happy that she has a knowledgeable optician for a friend. Linda Pritchard was in the process of clearing out her garage, but because of her poor eyesight, she asked her optician to check over the contents of the garage for her first. The optician was stunned to find a gold Art Deco handbag worth thousands of dollars. The bag once belonged to Linda's sister, who worked as a carer for an elderly man called Gwyn Jones, who left it to her in his will. What they didn't know was that Mr. Jones's late wife, Dora Jones, was a wealthy socialite of the 1920s and 1930s, and lived a life of luxury on ocean liners and royal cruise ships, including the RMS Elizabeth. There were even photos of her time on the ship inside the bag. The Emmanuel Joseph bag was made in 1913, and was expected to make around $5,000 at auction. The last thing you want to find when you're returning to your home after a flood is a huge chunk of a Proton M rocket parked on your property. But that was the sight awaiting a resident of Altai in Siberia after the 2014 floods. The water had seemingly brought him the rocket stage as a parting gift, and deposited it in his back garden. Initially, he was fearful that the rocket might be dangerous, or at least pose a threat to his land because of the toxic contents he presumed it would have. Thankfully, tests conducted by local officials revealed that it was a harmless shell and had never contained any fuel. Sometimes retired rocket pieces like this are used for a variety of purposes by farmers, and so the most likely explanation is that it had been carried here from flooded farmland. The original manufacturers of the rocket agreed to take it back, leaving the resident to enjoy his garden in peace. It's the dream of every amateur metal detectorist to find buried treasure in the ground. All most people ever find is the occasional shard of old metal, but every once in a while someone will find their fortune. 4 friends were out detecting in a field in Buckinghamshire, England, when they happened upon the largest haul of old gold and silver coins seen in the country within the past decade. There were 557 coins in total, all of which were gold or silver, and dated back to the time of the Black Death. They were minted during the reigns of King Edward I and Edward II, ranging from 1272 to 1327. The head of the team is Andrew Winter, who says they were so panicked by the discovery that they slept on site in tents while completing the excavation work in case anybody else came along and took their find. The coins are believed to have been stashed away for safekeeping by a local nobleman over 600 years ago, and are worth an estimated $250,000. We tend to think of the idea of time capsules, by which we mean of deliberately leaving objects and information buried for future generations to find, as a recent idea. But a priest in the 18th century was clearly planning for the future when he cheekily hid a note inside the backside of a statue of Jesus Christ. The note was found by restoration workers at the church of Santa Agueda in Burgos, Spain, and is signed and dated to 1777 by a priest called Joaquin Minguez. Joaquin's note contained plenty of information about the time he lived in, including games that were popular with children, diseases which were afflicting the local population, and a list of the best bullfighters in his local area. It would seem he had a special affection for the region's wine, writing that it had enjoyed bountiful harvests for many consecutive years. Given the discreet hiding place of the note, it would seem that the priest was keen to pass his message on to the world of tomorrow. 300 years later, it's been received. Not all time capsule discoveries are pleasant ones. Sometimes they remind us of the worst period in human history. Archaeologists digging in the Polish town of Zlocieniec were hoping to find a rumored 1933 movie which was made to celebrate the town's 600th anniversary. Instead, they found a Nazi time capsule and discovered the building they were digging in was once a Nazi training center. There was indeed a capsule waiting to be discovered, but instead of a film, it contained a letter from a banker dated to 1934, a few sample coins from that year, and 2 copies of Adolf Hitler's book Mein Kampf. There were also pro-Nazi newspapers in the capsule, used as lining. Despite what the find represents, local historians still hope to use them as a display in a local museum, pointing out that even bad history still has value. If we told you a tomb had been discovered full of intricate ornaments and carvings and elaborate sarcophagi, you'd probably imagine that we were talking about somewhere in Egypt. But sometimes these wonderful discoveries can also be made in Italy. A 2,400-year-old perfectly preserved Etruscan tomb has recently been unearthed close to Perugia, having laid undiscovered for all this time. The mysterious Etruscan civilization, who suddenly vanished 2,000 years ago, is believed to have taught winemaking to the French and road building to the Romans, as well as introducing writing to Europe. A farmer located this tomb below a field on his own property and called specialists in as soon as he realized that he'd come across a set of ancient stone double doors. When archaeologists entered, they found cremated human remains in marble urns, a statue of a young boy in marble, ceramic jars, and pottery. The sarcophagi are made of alabaster. More important than any of that, the tomb is full of inscriptions written in the Etruscan language. Because examples of the writing are very rare, complete translation of the Etruscan language has so far proved impossible. So the contents of this tomb may help researchers shed fresh light on this forgotten time. This classic car junkyard may have been created on purpose rather than being discovered by accident, but it's still the last thing you'd expect to find in the middle of a forest in the tiny town of White in Georgia, USA. Old Car City, as it's known, is the property of Walter Dean Lewis, who grew up on the site. It was formerly a general store, which opened in 1931 and sold auto parts. Now it's home to more than 4,000 rusting classic cars, including the very last car ever owned by Elvis Presley. Some of them are kept looking shiny and new, but others have been left to the mercy of the forest, having stayed exactly where they are for decades, and becoming home to animals and plants. In a few cases, tree branches are even lifting some of them up off the ground. Visitors are welcome at the museum site, which charges $15 if you just want to take a look, or $25 if you want to take photographs. If you're lucky, Dean Lewis will even show you his skills on the piano while you're browsing. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, and you will be the first to know when a new video comes out. Thank you for watching, and see you soon.